Hello, everyone, and welcome to AWS Innovate. This is Keeping Pets Happy and Healthy, Purina's journey exploring generative AI. My name is Jack Tanney. I'm a data and machine learning engineer with AWS's professional services. I'm here with Liz. She'll introduce herself.
Thank you, Jack. I'm Liz Hertel. I'm a product lead at Purina. I work in new business models with a focus on enterprise services.
Taking a look at today's agenda, we're first going to start with Purina's business overview. We'll learn about what drives Purina's business forward each day. Next, we'll talk through Purina's customer journey, exploring the different touchpoints Purina makes with their consumers throughout their customer lifecycle. Thirdly, we'll walk through how generative AI can enhance Purina's customer experience. Liz and I got to think big and explore a lot of different ways that generative AI could really improve Purina's customers' experience. Fourthly, we'll talk through Amazon Bedrock and some of its features like safeguards and guardrails and data privacy that really helped Liz and I imagine how we might be able to move something like this in front of a customer one day. And then lastly, Liz will talk through the risk and responsibility that comes with using generative AI, discussing some key points that we want to make sure are top of mind for all consumers.
Thank you so much, Jack. So Nestlé Purina Pet Care, or simply Purina, we have been in business for 130 years. We have the great privilege of feeding 46 million dogs and 68 million cats per year through beloved brands like Pro Plan, Friskies, Fancy Feast, and at Purina, pets are our highest priority, and that's reflected in the care that goes into each and every one of our products. We have a comprehensive quality and safety program in place that conducts 100,000 quality checks per day, and we have a robust team of experts like vets, behaviorists, nutritionists, ensuring that your pets receive only the highest quality nutrition. At Purina, one thing we can promise, one thing we know for sure, the health and safety of your pets will not be compromised. At Purina, at our core, we know pet food, we know nutrition, and now by embracing this new technology, we are on a mission to gain trust in additional areas of pet care. That could be IoT, connected devices, or a robust digital ecosystem. For example, with our Petivity Smart Litter Box, we leverage weight and behavioral data to alert pet owners to changes in their pet that could be indicative of a health issue. And today, we are in this era of AI, and it's a super exciting time to unlock and explore new ways for delivering personalized, proactive health. One goal many companies are working towards, and it holds true at Purina as well, is evolving their consumer-facing experience to create a true connected ecosystem. At Purina, we want this ecosystem to be meaningful, we want it to be consistent, and we want to deliver journeys of experience throughout the lifetime of a pet. So let's say you are on Pet Finder, you find a new puppy to bring home, you bring him settled, you go out and you find the right nutrition. And now throughout the lifetime of that pet, how can you help him through different stages of life or changing health conditions or changing dietary considerations? At Purina, we want to provide a safe, trusted, lifelong partnership. Currently, we have some somewhat siloed consumer experiences that may feel a little disjointed to the user. And in the space I'm currently working in, connected services, we are tasked with really bridging that gap and connecting the data, connecting the systems and applications, and really trying to figure out how to cut through the noise and bring it all together to deliver a true consumer-facing expression of an ecosystem. So why use AI at Purina? And truly the question we ask ourselves is, how can we use it to continue to enrich the lives of pets and the people that love them? How can we use AI to make ourselves more efficient, to increase speed to market with new pet care innovation? Can we use AI to cultivate personalized experiences that stretch beyond pet food? Is there a way to embrace it to generate ideas or content? Ultimately, how can we leverage AI to improve health and happiness of pets and people? So, how do we get started? Here are a few steps we took to embrace this technology responsibly. Leverage your partners. We have experts in this space that we work with day in, day out, like our friends at AWS. How can they really help us understand what technology is available and what that technology can enable? How can we at Purina lean on those partners to better understand best practices in this industry and in this space. And then source use cases from product and business. At Purina, the business side of the house, they have the pulse on gaps and changes in consumer needs. And then you have product and marketing bringing that experience to life, setting the tone, each side bringing a unique perspective on ways we can leverage generative AI across the spectrum, big, small. And then establish boundaries. How do we get started responsibly? What are the parameters that we know that we need to work within? Or what do we need to stay away from? That could be anything from oversight to monitoring to putting proactive controls in place. And in the partnership with Jack and team, we really relied on some of those features in Bedrock to safeguard the content that we were putting in front of our consumers. And so what do these boundaries mean for you and your team? Then assess effort versus impact. At Purina, we wanted to understand what are the gains to the consumer? Where might we see an impact operationally? How can we then layer impact with effort? Effort not only from an engineering perspective, but if we are looking to minimize risk, what is the effort to maximize that accuracy? And then, of course, prioritize, put together your learning agenda, get something out in the wild, learn, adjust, iterate. Okay. Jack, I'm going to pass it back over to you for a deeper dive on this.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. So, as Liz and I began experimenting with generative AI, we thought big. We tried to think of some big ideas and evaluate how helpful they'd be to Purina's consumers. One of those ideas we came up with was the idea of a generative AI-based pet trainer. You can think of this pet trainer as maybe a chatbot on one of Purina's applications that Purina's customers can interact with and ask questions about their pet, learn more about them, and try to understand how Purina could help any of their own conditions or experiences they're having. So we've got two examples here that Liz and I created manually to try to think big and imagine what generative AI might be able to do for Purina and their customers. The first one over on the left, you can see the prompt is, my 12-year-old lab Marley, this is a small Marley and Me reference, seems uninterested in her kibble. But she loves when I make her simple food like chicken and rice. What do you think she'd like better? So you can see that this consumer has a 12-year-old lab Marley who's not as interested in its current food, and they're trying to figure out how can we make mealtime more enjoyable for Marley. An ideal response in this case would be something along the lines of, oh no, as your dogs age, their taste preferences can change. So we're going to educate the user a bit on why Marley might not be as interested in this kibble. And we'll say that switching up flavors can really help provide some variety that older pups might be looking for. We then finish off with asking if they've tried any dog food specifically formulated to taste like chicken and rice, a flavor we already know Marley likes. We'll lastly end up telling the consumer that there are a number of dry and wet foods on the market that satisfy those chicken and rice cravings, and we might be able to provide a few of the Purina products that fit within that category. So this was one ideal response that we'd like to get. A second type of prompt that we might hear is something along the lines of, my cat Whiskers is always sad when I get home from work. I think she misses me during the day. So this user here has a cat named Whiskers that seems uninterested, sad, however you may want to describe it when they get home from work each day. An ideal response that Liz and I helped create, something along the lines of, I'm so sorry to hear about Whiskers' despair. We're again going to educate the owner and say that it's pretty normal for pets to long for their owners throughout the day. And we'll provide a recommendation, like you might want to play with Whiskers right when you get home so that she can start to associate you returning from work as a positive experience. And then lastly, we do want this type of pet trainer to provide some recommendation that centers around Purina's products or how Purina as a brand might be able to assist them. So we might provide some favorite cat toy recommendations that they could utilize at this new playtime that they're going to create. So this was Liz and I really just thinking big and trying to understand, how could generative AI fit within this ecosystem that Purina is building. So through this experience of thinking big, Liz and I did learn some things. One of those things was once we manually created some of those prompts and responses, we started playing around with some actual generative AI tools. And we noticed that prompting was extremely important. We found that proper prompting made all the difference. Experimenting with as many as 20 different prompting styles or strategies really helped us narrow in on the tone that we were looking for, the structure we were looking for. We found that without experimenting and iterating so many times, we weren't getting the results we were looking for. So keep at it, keep trying different prompting techniques. Eventually, you'll start to see some patterns ensue, and you'll be able to hone in on a better prompt. Within that prompt, we found that including context specific to your industry or task greatly improved the reasoning of the model. For instance, we provided some definitions of pet nutrition terminology that we don't suspect the model to know already. This really helped the model feel a bit more educated or resourced in pet nutrition, as we knew that's the type of responses or prompts we expected users to give. Thirdly, examples of perfect human written responses can help suggest the intended response structure and tone. So the examples from the previous slide that Liz and I actually wrote ourselves, this helped the model understand what is the structure and tone that we expect your responses to look like. And then fourthly, as we began playing around in Amazon's Bedrock's playground, we found that it was actually quite easy to tune the model's creativity levels. This was very important because for this use case, Purina wanted a relatively direct brand voice, but you can imagine there might be other use cases where we might want more sarcasm or personality or emojicons. Bedrock made it pretty easy to toggle that bar back and forth. Here's an example of a prompt template that Liz and I created that helps standardize some of the prompts that we were sending to different generative AI tools as we kept playing and experimenting with them. I'll break this prompt template down paragraph by paragraph. In the first paragraph here, we let the generative AI model know exactly what it is. It's an automated pet health chatbot for Purina. We also let this chatbot know this is what you should do. Based on the pet profile and the specific pet health conditions, so the user input, you need to provide recommended next steps for the owner, including any Purina products that help. So you can think of that first paragraph as instructions and context. Next, we provide one of those perfect, we'll call it, human-written examples of an ideal response. So you can see this ideal response uses a different example. We're sorry your dog name, has waning endurance on long hikes. So we assume that the user, that was the input. My dog's got waning endurance on long hikes. We let them know that you should maybe reach out to your veterinarian. So this will signal to the model that integrating your veterinarian into this recommendation is important. We'll also hit on things like diet, which we think could be a leading factor in activity stamina, and let them know that there is actually a Purina product that's specifically formulated for dogs that do have waning endurance. So this is the type of response we're hoping to get from a model. And then lastly, we are again telling the model what not to do. So don't use any information not included above, and make sure you focus on the Purina product portfolio and the pet symptom recommendations that we've provided to the model, and explain how the owner could help with their pet symptom that they're having or pet condition. So it's very literal. You have to really write out these instructions exactly as the generative AI model will interpret them. But this type of template was really useful as we moved further and further along the exploration phase. Next, we'll talk about model selection. At this point, Liz and I experimented with a number of different foundation models, and we were starting to learn that some of these foundation models were actually much better suited for different types of recommendations that Purina was hoping to make than others. Through experimenting with these different FMs, we found that a specific foundation model was best suited to Purina's preferred tone and sentiment. Amazon Bedrock gave us this optionality to try the same prompt with multiple different foundation models and helped us narrow in on the right one. We found that optionality was very key as we were going through this model selection process, and it was nice to have a wide breadth of foundation models available to us. Next, I want to talk through some of the features in Amazon Bedrock that we found really useful as we began to move from just thinking big to thinking about implementation. So first, we'll talk through guardrails. Guardrails can be used to check for fact-checking. So fact-checking is when we want to compare a generative AI response against text retrieved from a knowledge base to see if those responses are actually accurate. Below, in the different font here, you can see an example of a response that we got from a generative AI bot when we were asking how could we potentially help a customer that has common cat allergies. So the response goes as, here is an explanation of how Purina Pro Plan's Live Clear food can help if you've got cat allergies. And taking from the Purina product portfolio, we've got information about Pro Plan Live Clear. It says that this food contains a key protein sourced from eggs that helps reduce FeLD5, which is a common allergen in cat saliva. And some research has shown that when you feed your cat this, they reduce FeLD5 in their hair and dander. However, when we actually compared this response to the Purina product portfolio, FeLD5 is actually incorrect. It's actually FeLD1. That's the common allergen that Purina Pro Plan Live Clear is known to reduce. So through guardrails, we were able to replace FeLD5 with FeLD1, create a factually correct response, and provide that to the user. So this was really valuable as we were ensuring that the responses would definitely not differ from Purina's own product portfolio. The second feature of guardrails that we found useful was hallucination detection. A hallucination is when a model provides a response that's illogical or not factually correct. One of the ways that we can try to detect if there is a hallucination and keep it from coming in front of a user would be to self-check generative AI responses by generating multiple responses and testing their consistency. So we could ask the same prompt to a model. It might give us back a few different responses, and we will then be able to evaluate those different responses and determine, are they consistent? And if they are, there's probably not a hallucination to worry about. So in summary, guardrails for Amazon Bedrock lets you implement safeguards tailored to your own responsible AI policies. We found that these guardrails that we created, we could consistently apply them across different foundation models as we were still going through that model selection phase. And that was quite useful to ensure that the corporate standards that Purina is beginning to develop in generative AI get applied everywhere. Next, you can configure filtering of any sort of harmful content and topics to avoid based on your responsible AI policies. For instance, if Purina wants to stay away from making specific pet health diagnoses, we can make sure that the responses coming out of these models don't try to diagnose the pet with a certain condition. And then thirdly, redacting personally identifiable information, a bit less pertinent to the Purina case, but it's still a very notable feature of Amazon Bedrock that is nice to know as we start to think about how we might explore moving this into one of Purina's actual applications. The last feature of Amazon Bedrock that we found quite useful was its data privacy. With Amazon Bedrock, you're always in control of your data. Customer data is never used to improve any foundation model. So as different consumers would be interacting with this generative AI chatbot, and we might feed in proprietary information about Purina's products or what makes them up, we can always be ensured that that data stays within our own VPC and it's logically separated from other customers, and it won't ever get leaked out into another foundation model. We found that to be really reassuring as we tried to evaluate different types of internal data that we could utilize to provide better responses. At this point, Liz and I had gone through many of the different exploration steps that you would want to go through when you're evaluating generative AI for your business. We next wanted to understand how difficult would it be to integrate something like this into their existing applications. Here you can see a sample reference architecture for adding Amazon Bedrock, just as easy as an API, into your existing application. On the left there, your front-end application can be deployed anywhere. And using Amazon's API gateway, we can provide an API endpoint that your front end can hit using authentication, maybe from Cognito, to then interact with the backend services that make up this generative AI bot. The serverless backend can be constructed of a number of different services, for instance, Lambda or DynamoDB, and this helps do things like use your prompt template, coordinate different types of prompting and responses, etc. On the bottom right, you can see retrieval augmented generation or RAG engines. These are places where we might want to store Purina's product portfolio into a service like Amazon Aurora or Amazon OpenSearch. And then Bedrock, of course, the star service of the show, is in the top right. This is where that foundation model is actually hosted and deployed for us to utilize. So we felt quite confident looking at a sample reference architecture like this, the integration into their existing applications wouldn't be very difficult. It's really just another API call, and it is that easy. Lastly, I'm going to pass it back over to Liz as she talks through the risk and responsibility of generative AI.
So, through our journey, it was critical that we identify a proactive, robust approach to risk to not only safeguard the business, but more importantly, to protect our consumers, our pets, our people. But it's not about setting rules, it's about developing that vision, then aligning that with your business values, then identifying risk, identifying gaps, and developing a measurement plan to truly help you pave that path forward. So, a few things that we found essential to a responsible approach. First of all, start small, reduce risk. Stay away from sensitive areas. For us, that included financials or PII. Those were areas we did not want to put at risk. Leverage trusted data sets. So, if you are fine tuning your models, make sure you use data that you know is reputable. By improving that accuracy and reliability, you'll get more dependable results. Human review. For us, it was critical to have that human touch point to help us review accuracy, to help us suss out bias, and truly ensure that the models were operating as intended. And then transparency, which truly goes hand in hand with honesty. When collecting the data to fine tune your models, are you receiving consent? Make sure that's part of your process. Or for any consumer facing outputs, make sure you set expectation with those users. Be transparent when AI is involved. And then, of course, design and deploy with clear ethical guidelines. Ensure that you can prevent unintended consequence as much as possible. At Purina, one thing we will never do is take risk with pet health, and that includes the adoption of new technology. Ultimately, the power of AI is exciting. The promise of AI is incredibly exciting. And at Purina, we want to harness that, but we want to do that while also continuing to be stewards of trust and responsibility. Okay, Jack, do you want to wrap us up?
I will. Liz, thank you so much. To all those attending, thank you so much for attending AWS Innovate and attending this session with Liz and I. I do want to give a special thanks to Liz for her participation in this event. Purina is a great partner to AWS, and we're really excited to keep working with you on this. Liz and I's contact information is listed here below if you want to follow up after the session.